We kicked dirt over the dying embers of the small fire, the warmth fleeing the room instantly. The cellar had been a brief reprieve, but the war wasn't waiting for us to catch our breath. I checked the feed on my gun, feeling the familiar, heavy reassurance of the cold steel. "Let's move, lads," I commanded. The men of the now 4th Battalion rose in unison, shadows detaching from the darkness. We climbed the crumbling stairs, emerging back into the bite of the night air. The city was a skeleton of its former self, moonlight poking through the smog and distant fires crackling. We moved in a wedge formation, boots crunching softly on pulverized brick and glass. I took the point, my enhanced senses straining against the gloom. We were heading for the enemy stronghold, a converted cathedral at the end of the district. It loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette against the smoke-choked sky. As we broke into the open square before the stronghold, it struck me how silent it had become. Then the fog at the cathedral doors swirled. A figure stepped out. He was massive. Even from 50 yards away, I could see he dwarfed a normal man. His armor was matte black, scarred from 1,000 battles, and his eyes portrayed a man who had no time for mercy or reprisal. He stopped, spreading his arms as if welcoming an old friend.
"So,"
a voice boomed, deep and distorted, thick with a German accent.
"you think a little toy can stop the Reich?"
I didn't waste breath on banter. "Open fire!" I squeezed the trigger. My squad unleashed hell alongside me. Tracers lit up the night, a river of fire pouring into the giant. But he was fast, unnaturally fast. He moved with a blur that defied his size, returning fire with a MG42 that sounded like thunder cracking right next to your ear.
"Do you really think you can defeat a super soldier?"
We traded lead until the mechanisms clicked dry.
"No more toys? I've seen more danger in a sausage."
The silence that followed was ringing in my ears. I tossed my overheating gun to the pavement. He did the same. "No more toys," he rumbled, stepping into the street.
9! Now, I break you like a pretzel, mein Feind!
We sprinted at each other, colliding in the center of the square with the force of a train wreck. The shockwave rattled the teeth in my skull. He was stronger than I had anticipated. His fist caught me on the jaw, and the world tilted sideways. I didn't just stumble. I flew backward, crashing through the brick facade of a bakery. Dust and plaster buried me instantly. I scrambled up, coughing up grit, just as he came charging through the hole I'd made.
Come on, just try to stop me, if you dare!
He grabbed me by my armor and hurled me back out onto the street.
Ach, I'll crush you like a bratwurst at Oktoberfest!
I skidded across the pavement, struggling to find my footing. He laughed. He reached out, his gloved hands wrapping around the base of an iron gaslight pole. With a groan of tortured metal, he snapped it from the sidewalk, wielding the 10-foot post like a club. He swung. I ducked. The pole smashed into the side of a building, showering us in sparks and glass. The next swing caught me in the ribs. I gasped, tasting copper, and went down hard. My vision blurred. He stood over me, the moonlight glinting off his armor, raising the pole for a killing blow. The pain was overwhelming, a dark tide pulling me under. It's over, I thought. But then I saw them. In my mind's eye, the faces of the 4th Battalion flashed before me. Not just the men behind me now, but the ones I'd lost. The ones who never made it out of the trenches. Their laughter, their grit, the way they trusted me to lead them. It wasn't just a memory, it was a jolt. A physical surge of electricity zapped from the base of my spine to my fingertips. My heart went into drive, overriding the pain. I wasn't fighting for survival anymore. I was fighting for them. As the pole came down, I caught it, with one hand. The German's eyes widened beneath his helmet. I ripped the metal from his grip and tossed it aside like a twig. I stood up, the agony fading into a cold, diamond-hard focus. I stepped in, driving a fist into his solar plexus. From the ashes we arise, I grunted, the words spilling out with the breath of the strike. He doubled over, gasping. I brought my knee up into his chin, the metal of my greaves crunching against his helmet. Beneath the smoke and burning skies, I recited, stepping forward, forcing him back. He tried to swing a haymaker, desperation creeping into his movements. I caught his arm, twisting it, and used his own momentum to slam him into a brick wall. The masonry exploded outward. "For every brother you have slain," I growled, pulling back my fist, every muscle fiber screaming in unison for one final massive blow. I drove my fist into the center of his chest plate, the impact echoing through the square like a cannon shot. "You shall know a world of pain." The blow didn't just dent his armor, it caved it in. The giant stumbled back, wheezing, the red glow in his eyes flickering like a dying bulb. The invincible German engineering was failing under the weight of pure, raw fury. "Your empire falls," I whispered, grabbing him by the gorget of his neck armor. I slammed him downward, driving his head into the cobblestones with a force that cracked the pavement. In freedom's name. He lay there, twitching, the red lights in his helmet finally fading to black. The spectral energy of the 4th Battalion slowly receded, slipping back into the corners of my mind. The pain in my ribs returned, sharp and biting, but I stood tall. I looked down at the broken Titan. "You were right," I rasped, wiping blood from my lip. "No more toys." Behind me, the sound of boots on gravel broke the spell. I turned to see the rest of my squad emerging from the smoke, battered, soot-stained, but alive. They stared at the fallen giant, then at me, eyes wide. "Sarge?" Corporal Miller asked, his voice shaking slightly. "Is he?" "He's done," I said, "but we're not." I looked up at the cathedral doors, dark and looming. I motioned to the heavy oak doors of the stronghold. "Let's breach it." The squad moved past the fallen behemoth, giving his massive, motionless armor a wide berth. Their boots crunched on the debris-strewn pavement as they stacked up against the rough stone wall on either side of the towering cathedral doors. The wood was ancient oak, reinforced with thick iron bands, looking less like a church entrance and more like the gate to a fortress. I nodded to Miller. He pulled a satchel charge from his pack, adhering it to the center seam of the doors with trembling hands. "Charge is set, boss," he muttered, stepping back. "Blow it!" The explosion was a sharp, concussive crump that punched the heavy doors inward. They didn't just open. They disintegrated off their hinges in a cloud of splinters and smoke. I went in first, weapon raised, stepping through the haze. The interior was cavernous, the air much colder than the burning street outside. Moonlight filtered through shattered stained glass windows high above. It was quiet. Too bloody quiet. The pews were gone. The nave, once a place of worship, had been converted into a staging area. Crates of munitions were stacked high against stone pillars, defaced with hastily painted symbols. Strange, humming machinery sat where the confessionals used to be, cables snaking across the flagstone floor like black vines. The air smelled of old incense mixed with machine oil. We fanned out, moving silently between the stacks of supplies, checking corners, a vast space that was ripe for an ambush. "Clear right, clear left," Miller replied. We pushed deeper toward the high altar at the far end of the nave. It was draped in heavy tarp, concealing something massive beneath it. "Eyes up," I cautioned, scanning the shadowed balconies that lined the upper levels. They didn't leave this place unguarded. Almost as if on cue, a harsh, blinding floodlight snapped on from the balcony above the altar, washing out our vision. A split second later, the roar of a heavy machine gun echoed through the stone chamber. Bullets ripped at the floor inches from my boots. "Contact front! Get to cover, gents!" I roared, diving behind a stack of metal crates as the cathedral erupted into chaos. The deafening roar of the heavy machine gun was amplified by the cathedral's acoustics. Stone chips and sparks sprayed from the pillar I was huddled behind, stinging my face. "Sarge, we're pinned!" Miller screamed over the chaotic din. "We can't get a bead on them!" He was right. The angle was too steep. The gunner on the balcony had the high ground, and every time one of my boys peeked out to return fire, the stone around them disintegrated. We were sitting ducks. I touched the dented armor on my chest, feeling the bruise deep in my ribs from the fight outside. Did I have it in me for a prolonged firefight? What I did know, I had to end this now. "Miller, on my mark, you pour everything you've got at that balcony. Keep their heads down." "Copy that, Sarge. But what are you?" "Mark!" I didn't wait for his answer. I surged from behind the pillar just as my squad opened up. A dozen rifles chattered in unison, a staccato of lead. A wave of bloody lead sweeping across the balcony railing. The enemy gunner ducked. It had done the job. The heavy weapon falling silent for a heartbeat. That was my window. I didn't run for cover. I ran for the wall. I hit the vertical stone surface with enough momentum to run 2 steps up it, my boots scrabbling for purchase. My hand shot out, fingers digging into the ornate carving of a stone gargoyle protruding from the pillar. With a grunt of exertion that set my ribs on fire, I hauled myself up, swinging my legs over the railing of the balcony. The gunner, a regular soldier, eyes wide with terror behind his goggles, was just popping back up. He swung the barrel toward me, but he was moving in slow motion compared to the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I didn't recite a poem this time. There was no poetry in this, only efficiency. I kicked the weapon's barrel upward, sending a burst of bullets into the vaulted ceiling, and followed through with a backhand that sent the soldier crumpling to the floor.
Clear!
The silence returned. I walked to the edge of the balcony, looking down at the altar. From this height, I had a clear view of the massive shape beneath the tarp. The earlier gunfire had severed one of the ropes securing it. Slowly, heavily, the canvas slid off one side. It wasn't a tank. It wasn't a bomb. It was a glass cylinder, 10 feet tall, glowing with a soft, sick green light. Suspended inside, floating in the liquid, was a man. Modified, perhaps. Tubes ran into his spine, and his skin looked like a catcher's mitt.
Bloody hell!
Sarge, what is that? Before I could answer, the liquid in the tank began to bubble. The figure inside opened its eyes. The bubbling grew violent, a chaotic frothing that turned the green liquid into a churning maelstrom. The man, or whatever was left of a man inside that tube, jerked. It was a spasm, a violent twitch that sent a ripple through the connecting tubes. Back! I roared, gripping the stone railing of the balcony.
Miller, get the squad back!
On the floor below, my men scrambled, boots slipping on the slick stone as they retreated toward the pillars. But they couldn't take their eyes off the horror. A low hum filled the cathedral, emanating from the machinery at the tank's base. The glass began to shatter. Spiderweb cracks appeared on the surface of the cylinder, glowing white under the strain. Then it shattered. The glass exploded outward. A torrent of viscous green fluid washed over the altar, carrying shards of glass. The figure inside collapsed onto the wet stone with a wet, heavy slap, ripping the tubes from his spine. Sparks showered down from the severed connections, dancing on his wet skin. He lay there on his hands and knees, heaving. His skin was translucent, pale as death, stretching tight over his shoulders and back. "Hold fire!" I ordered, leveling my rifle at the figure from my perch. "Let's see if it stays down." It didn't. Slowly the thing uncoiled. It stood up, rising to a height that rivaled the German giant I'd just killed outside. But this was different. Leaner, wire-taut muscle woven with hydraulics. It turned its head, the movement mechanical and jerky. Its eyes locked onto Miller. They weren't glowing red like the other one. They were solid black, void of anything human. "Open fire!" Miller screamed. The squad unleashed everything they had. Bullets penetrated the creature's chest, but instead of staggering, it took it. It then moved, closing the gap to Miller in a heartbeat. It didn't punch. It swiped. That sent Miller flying across the nave to crash into a row of wooden crates. "Miller!" I shouted. The creature turned, tilting its head up toward me on the balcony. It had heard me. It crouched, the hydraulics in its legs whining, and then it launched itself upward. It cleared the 20 feet in a single bound, landing on the railing right in front of me. Up close, I could smell the chemicals leaking from its pores, formaldehyde and motor oil. I didn't have time to think. I swung the butt of my rifle at its face. It caught the weapon mid-swing, crushing the steel barrel in its grip like it was paper. It tilting its head. "Bloody hell, that's my Maxim," I muttered. I let go of the ruined gun and stepped in, driving a jab at its throat. It was like hitting a fleshy concrete wall. The creature didn't even flinch. It grabbed me by the throat, lifting me off my feet and dangling me over the drop. My vision narrowed as its grip tightened, cutting off my air. My hand scrabbled for my combat knife, but my reach was failing. Then the spark returned. Faint, but there. The memory of Miller crashing into the crates below ignited that familiar fire in my mind. The connection to my battalion. I gritted my teeth, my vision widening with furious red. I wasn't dying here. Not by a lab rat. I drove my thumbs into the creature's black eyes. In darkness deep, where demons crawl, I choked out, the words squeezed from my crushing windpipe. We stand as one and watch them fall. The creature screeched, a sound of bloody horror and agony, and loosened its grip just enough. I didn't waste the breath. I brought both boots up, planting them squarely on its chest, and kicked with everything the 4th Battalion gave me. The force broke its hold. The creature stumbled back, teetering on the edge of the balcony railing. I didn't let it recover. I lunged forward, tackling it around the waist, and drove us both over the edge. Gravity took us. We plummeted 20 feet toward the stone floor below, locked in a death grip.